Welcome to Just Stories. We hope you enjoy the story. The Suez Crisis, the Arab-Israeli Conflict and the Battle for Control, by Just Stories. Chapter 1, Origins of the Crisis. The Suez Crisis was a major conflict that took place in 1956 between Egypt, Israel, and a coalition of European powers led by Britain and France. At the heart of the crisis was the Suez Canal, a crucial waterway that connected the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean. The canal had been built in the late 19th century by the French and British, and had become a vital artery for international trade and transportation. The origins of the crisis can be traced back to the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948. The Arab-Israeli conflict that ensued would shape the political landscape of the Middle East for decades to come. In the years following Israel's creation, tensions between Israel and its Arab neighbors, particularly Egypt, continued to escalate. Egypt was opposed to the existence of Israel and sought to support Palestinian militants who were fighting against the Israeli government. One of the key figures in the build-up to the Suez Crisis was Egypt's President Gamal Abdel Nasser. Nasser came to power in 1952 and sought to modernize and industrialize Egypt. He was a charismatic leader who espoused Arab nationalism and sought to promote Egyptian sovereignty and independence. Nasser also sought to position himself as a leader of the non-aligned movement, a group of countries that were not aligned with either the United States or the Soviet Union during the Cold War. In 1956, Nasser took a major step towards asserting Egyptian sovereignty by nationalizing the Suez Canal. The canal had been owned by the French and British since its construction, and they had maintained a military presence in the area to protect their interests. Nasser's move to nationalize the canal was seen as a direct challenge to European control of the region. The nationalization of the canal was met with swift condemnation from the West. Britain and France saw it as a threat to their economic and strategic interests, as well as a challenge to their power and influence in the region. The United States, which was concerned about the spread of Soviet influence in the Middle East, also opposed the nationalization of the canal. The Suez Crisis was further complicated by the involvement of Israel. In the years leading up to the crisis, Israel had been engaged in a series of border conflicts with Egypt and was concerned about the threat posed by Nasser's military buildup. Israel saw the nationalization of the canal as a threat to its security, as it relied on the waterway for much of its trade with Asia. The origins of the Suez Crisis, therefore, lie in a complex web of historical, political, and economic factors. The conflict was fueled by the Arab-Israeli conflict, the desire for Egyptian sovereignty, and the struggle for control of a vital waterway. In the following chapters, we will explore the international response to the crisis, the military actions taken by the parties involved, and the aftermath and legacy of the conflict. Chapter 2, The International Response. The Suez Crisis was not just a conflict between Egypt and Israel, but a major international crisis that involved some of the world's most powerful nations. The actions taken by the United States, the Soviet Union, and the European powers played a crucial role in shaping the outcome of the conflict. In the early days of the crisis, there was a flurry of diplomatic activity as world leaders sought to defuse the situation. The United States, which had been supporting the development of the Aswan Dam in Egypt, was concerned about the impact of the crisis on its relations with Egypt and the broader Arab world. President Eisenhower called for a peaceful resolution to the conflict and urged Britain, France, and Israel to withdraw their troops from the region. The Soviet Union, meanwhile, saw the crisis as an opportunity to expand its influence in the Middle East. The Soviet leadership denounced the Western powers for their intervention in the region and offered military and economic support to Egypt. In Britain and France, there was a deep sense of anger and frustration at Nasser's nationalization of the Suez Canal. The two countries had a long history of involvement in the region and saw the canal as a vital link to their former colonies in Asia and Africa. Prime Minister Anthony Eden saw the nationalization of the canal as a direct challenge to British interests and believed that military action was necessary to protect British economic and strategic interests. On October 29, 1956, Israeli forces invaded the Sinai Peninsula, and Britain and France issued an ultimatum to Egypt, demanding that they withdraw their troops from the Canal Zone. When the ultimatum was ignored, British and French forces launched a military invasion of Egypt. The international response to the invasion was mixed, with many countries expressing concern and criticism at the actions of the Western powers. The United Nations played a crucial role in the international response to the crisis. The General Assembly passed a resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire and the withdrawal of foreign troops from the region. The United States, which had been working behind the scenes to resolve the conflict, played a key role in securing a ceasefire agreement. The Soviet Union also played a role in the ceasefire negotiations, using its influence to pressure the Western powers to withdraw their forces from the region. In the end, the Suez Crisis was a major setback for Britain and France. The international condemnation of their actions, combined with pressure from the United States and the Soviet Union, forced the two countries to withdraw their forces from the region. The crisis also had a lasting impact on the balance of power in the Middle East, with Egypt emerging as a more assertive player in the region. The international response to the Suez Crisis highlights the complex interplay between national interests, global politics, and regional conflicts. The actions taken by the United States, the Soviet Union, and the European powers illustrate the challenges of balancing diplomacy, military intervention, and international cooperation in resolving complex international crises. Chapter 3: The Invasion. The Israeli invasion of the Sinai Peninsula on October 29, 1956, marked the beginning of the military phase of the Suez Crisis. The invasion was a major turning point in the conflict and set off a chain of events that would shape the outcome of the crisis. The Israeli invasion was prompted by a number of factors, including growing concerns about Egyptian military buildup and the nationalization of the Suez Canal. Israeli leaders saw the nationalization of the canal as a direct threat to their national security, as the canal was a key route for Israeli trade with Asia. They also saw the Egyptian military buildup as a sign that Egypt was preparing for war with Israel. The Israeli invasion was a swift and decisive military operation. Israeli forces, led by General Moshe Dayan, quickly overran Egyptian positions in the Sinai Peninsula and advanced towards the Canal Zone. The Israeli Air Force also carried out a series of bombing raids on Egyptian airfields, destroying much of Egypt's air force on the ground. The invasion was met with mixed reactions from the international community. The United States, which had been working behind the scenes to defuse the crisis, was taken by surprise by the Israeli attack. President Eisenhower condemned the invasion and called for an immediate ceasefire. The Soviet Union, on the other hand, expressed support for the Egyptian government and called for an end to Western intervention in the region. Britain and France, meanwhile, saw the Israeli invasion as an opportunity to intervene in the region and protect their economic and strategic interests. On November 5, 1956, Britain and France issued an ultimatum to Egypt, demanding that they withdraw their troops from the Canal Zone. When the ultimatum was ignored, British and French forces launched a military invasion of Egypt. The British and French invasion was also swift and decisive, with their forces quickly taking control of key strategic positions in Egypt. The international response to the invasion, however, was overwhelmingly negative. The United States, the Soviet Union, and other countries condemned the invasion and called for an immediate ceasefire. The invasion marked a turning point in the Suez Crisis, as it forced the hand of the international community and set off a chain of events that would ultimately lead to the withdrawal of foreign forces from the region. The invasion also had a lasting impact on the relationship between the Western powers and the Middle East, as it highlighted the deep-seated mistrust and resentment that existed between the two sides. The Israeli and British-French invasions of the Suez Canal Zone were military actions that were taken in response to a complex set of political and economic factors. The invasion of the Sinai Peninsula by Israeli forces and the subsequent invasion by British and French forces illustrated the challenges of balancing national interests, military strategy, and international diplomacy in resolving complex international conflicts. Chapter 4: The Aftermath. The aftermath of the Suez Crisis was a period of diplomatic activity, ceasefire negotiations, and the withdrawal of foreign forces from the region. The international response to the crisis, combined with the military actions taken by the parties involved, had a profound impact on the Middle East and the world stage. The United Nations played a crucial role in the aftermath of the crisis, with the General Assembly passing a resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire and the withdrawal of foreign troops from the region. The ceasefire was brokered by the United States, which had been working behind the scenes to defuse the crisis. The Soviet Union also played a role in the ceasefire negotiations, using its influence to pressure the Western powers to withdraw their forces from the region. The withdrawal of foreign forces from the region was a slow and complicated process. British and French forces began to withdraw in late 1956, with the last troops leaving Egypt in June 1957. Israeli forces withdrew from the Sinai Peninsula in March 1957, but maintained control of the Gaza Strip. The aftermath of the crisis also had a lasting impact on the balance of power in the Middle East. Egypt emerged as a more assertive player in the region, with President Nasser gaining popularity among Arab and non-aligned nations. The crisis also helped to solidify the Arab-Israeli conflict, which would continue to simmer for decades to come. The Suez Crisis had a profound impact on international relations and the Cold War. The crisis highlighted the limitations of military intervention in resolving complex international conflicts and underscored the importance of diplomacy and international cooperation in resolving disputes. The crisis also marked a turning point in the relationship between the Western powers and the Middle East, as it highlighted the deep-seated mistrust and resentment that existed between the two sides. The aftermath of the Suez Crisis was a period of reflection and analysis for the international community. The crisis raised important questions about the role of the United Nations in resolving conflicts, the use of military force in international affairs, and the importance of promoting peaceful dialogue and diplomacy in resolving disputes. These questions would continue to shape international relations for decades to come. In conclusion, the aftermath of the Suez Crisis was a period of transition and change for the Middle East and the world. The crisis served as a wake-up call for the international community, highlighting the dangers of military intervention and the need for greater cooperation and understanding between nations. The lessons learned from the crisis continue to resonate today, as we continue to grapple with complex international conflicts and the challenges of promoting peace and stability in a rapidly changing world. Chapter 5: Legacy and Lessons. The legacy of the Suez Crisis extends far beyond the immediate aftermath of the conflict. The crisis marked a turning point in international relations and had a profound impact on the balance of power in the Middle East. It also raised important questions about the use of military force, the role of the United Nations, and the importance of diplomacy and international cooperation in resolving conflicts. One of the key legacies of the Suez Crisis was the impact it had on the Arab-Israeli conflict. The crisis served to deepen the mistrust and resentment between the two sides and solidified the conflict as one of the defining issues in the region. The crisis also helped to position Egypt as a more assertive player in the Middle East, with President Nasser emerging as a leading voice for Arab nationalism and independence. The Suez Crisis also had a lasting impact on the international community's approach to resolving conflicts. The crisis highlighted the limitations of military intervention in resolving complex international disputes and underscored the importance of diplomacy and international cooperation in resolving conflicts. The crisis also raised important questions about the role of the United Nations in maintaining international peace and security. The crisis also marked a turning point in the relationship between the Western powers and the Middle East. The intervention of Britain and France in the crisis was met with widespread international condemnation and served to undermine their credibility and influence in the region. The crisis also highlighted the deep-seated mistrust and resentment that existed between the West and the Middle East and underscored the importance of promoting greater understanding and cooperation between the two sides. The lessons learned from the Suez Crisis continue to resonate today, as the world continues to grapple with complex international conflicts and the challenges of promoting peace and stability in a rapidly changing world. The crisis serves as a reminder of the dangers of military intervention and the importance of promoting peaceful dialogue and diplomacy in resolving disputes. It also highlights the need for greater understanding and cooperation between nations, and the importance of maintaining a strong and effective international system for maintaining peace and security. In conclusion, the Suez Crisis was a defining moment in international relations and had a profound impact on the Middle East and the world. The crisis serves as a reminder of the importance of promoting peace, stability, and understanding in the face of complex international challenges. The lessons learned from the crisis continue to inform our approach to resolving conflicts and maintaining international peace and security, and will continue to shape international relations for generations to come. Thank you for watching our story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, so you don't miss out on our next video.